Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So this past weekend was pretty significant. On one hand, we had everyone cracking open Monstrous Revenge, an interesting reprint set that happens to bring with it some awesome new cards as well. At the same time though, we also had the Remote Duel YCS. What was crazy was the diversity of the top 32. I think that there were 15 different decks in all that made the top 32, so even though Sprite, Dragon Link, and Kashtira had the most representation, it was really cool to see Plunder Patrol, Tearlaments, and Sky Strikers top, and even to see Exo Sisters win the whole event. A lot of interesting things for us to go over as a result of this, so let's get started. Kicking things off, we're going to take a look at a couple of cards from Monstrous Revenge, and the first one is going to be Striker Ace Azalea. So aside from the alternate art of Engage, Azalea was the big hype card for Sky Strikers coming into the set. I think a lot of those other monsters really aren't worth running, but Azalea is actually a really cool card. On summon, it lets you pop any card on the field, and if you have 3 or less spells in the graveyard, then this card sends itself to the graveyard as well. Also, once per turn, if this card battles an opponent's monster, during the damage step, you can banish a spell from your graveyard to pop that monster. Really cool card, and because it just requires its materials to be light and dark, this is a really great way to consolidate resources for Sky Strikers if you happen to steal a monster from your opponent with either Widow Anchor or Triple Tactics talent. However, one other thing worth noting is that this card isn't limited to only being used in Sky Strikers. In my opinion, this is a really versatile Link monster that I think a lot of decks should be running if they have a bit of space in their extra deck and run light and dark monsters as well. So when this card was revealed, I think people thought that it would be just okay. So when Monstrous Revenge came out, the card kind of tanked in price pretty early on. It went from being a $30 hype card straight down to the $10 mark. But now I think people realized a couple of different things, right? One, the card is short printed to where you're probably only going to pull about 3 copies per case. 2, Sky Strikers are actually pretty solid as a strategy once again. And 3, this card can be used as a generic Link 2 monster to provide spot removal, sort of like Donner. So because of these things, Azalea is now up to $20 each, so a double up from the price that we saw just a few days ago. The card values in Monstrous Revenge are tanking pretty fast overall, so there's bound to be a couple of cards that vendors are going to try to push back up to make opening their cases worth it. I actually think that this is a card with a ton of potential, so I think it's worth picking up at least 1 or 2 copies of it between that $15 to $18 range. The other card I want us to look at is Assault Synchron, which I think was the most hyped new card to come out of this set. I think that absolutely everyone thought that Assault Synchron was going to be a really short printed card, like we were only going to be pulling 1 or 2 copies per case, just because the card had performed really well over in the OCG, and people were excited to see the card in action here in the TCG. And reading the card, it is really solid. It's a free special summon of a level 2 tuner from your hand in exchange for 700 life points and locking you into synchros for the rest of the turn. In addition, if a face-up dragon synchro you control is tributed or banished, you can banish this card to special summon back that monster. However, from what we've seen, the card really hasn't done too much noteworthy stuff. I'm filming this a little bit earlier in the night on Sunday, but I don't think I've seen any lists come out of the YCS yet that were running this card. At the same time, the card isn't actually short printed, and yeah, you'll pull 1 in every 1 or 2 boxes, but the card itself isn't difficult to pull or find by any means. So overall, those pre-sales that we were seeing with the card being $50, $60, those are looking pretty silly now. Hopefully that wasn't any of you guys that are watching this. If it is, you're not completely out of luck. I think that all things considered, Assault Synchron is probably underpriced for a card of its caliber. It's not seeing usage in anything right now, but once Revolution Synchron comes out in Duelist Nexus, I think that might be a big boost to Assault Synchron. At the very least, there's a lot more you can do with the card, though obviously I don't know if it's going to be enough to make the card a piece of a top-tier meta strategy or anything like that. With the lack of results from the YCS, expect this card to stay relatively steady, or maybe even drop a little bit. The card's currently at $8 each, but I could definitely see it getting down to between $5 and $7. However, once it does, I would definitely try to pick up a few copies if you can at around $4 to $5, since the card is just too good to overlook, and should eventually see its time to shine over the next several months. So this one is something I find pretty funny. It's Spiritual Water Art Aoi. So back a few months ago, I talked about picking up Water Art Aoi. It's a really cool trap card, especially with a pointer of the Red Lotus being gone, where you tribute any water monster, then get to look at your opponent's hand and send a card from their hand to the graveyard. Now, I think this card is really crazy, but back then, I actually recommended picking up this card when it was only $1, but it was because of Gishki Sprite. I thought that the Gishki cards would work really well with this. However, Sprite Elf ended up getting banned and it was kind of early, and Gishki Sprite was never really a full thing here in the TCG. You needed Elf to be able to abuse Gishki Abyss, and with Elf gone, the deck just wasn't that strong anymore, and Water Art Aoi never saw any usage. Well, now at the Remote Duel YCS, apparently the Sky Striker deck that made top 16 actually chose to run 3 copies of Water Art Aoi in the sideboard, and well, Sky Striker Ace Shizuku, the Sky Striker monster you usually have on your board at the end of the turn, just happens to be a water monster, so it means that this card is going to be live. Now, because of this, Super Rare Water Art Aoi from Astral Pack 2 is now a solid $8 card with very few quantities available on the market, though there are a bunch of different common printings as well that should still basically be bulk. Now, I don't know how good this actually is. The guy was also playing 2 copies of Trap Trick in the side as well, so that he could resolve this card. But I guess it does help you to get rid of a potential blowout card like Harpy's Feather Duster or Lightning Storm or Evenly Matched. I think that if I were on Sky Strikers, I would actually probably be playing this card too. It kind of sounds hilarious. Anyways, this one is just a note in case you guys happen to have any Super Water Art Aois lying around in your old hollow bulk, because this was a very cheap card for several years, or you want to try out a pretty spicy new tech in your Sky Striker side deck. Okay, I almost forgot to talk about this one, but I guess it's something we should make a note of. It's MX-Saber Invoker. So this card is a generic rank 3 monster, and you detach a material from this card to special summon a level 4 Earth Warrior or Beast Warrior from your deck directly, but it gets destroyed during the end phase. So this card was first banned because of Zodiac. You could run the Terror Top package to make Invoker, then summon a Zodiac monster from your deck and do a bunch of pretty crazy combos. Well, now Terror Top is limited, and even if it weren't, I don't think that there's anything you can really do that would be considered problematic. With Zodiac, we have Drident, Broadbull, and Barrage all banned, so I guess the best cards for you to use Invoker to bring out something would be like maybe Amazonas. Aside from that, I mean, Medolce can use it to bring out Messengelato, but overall, I just don't think that this card would be that good, and it probably could have been unbanned several years ago at this point. But the card being officially unbanned over in the OCG, I guess gives people a reason to go and pick out a couple copies of the card. So with Invoker, we have seen the original Secret Rares from Order of Chaos up at $6 to $7 now, and then we have the Battles of Legend Light Revenge Secret Rares at $2 to $3. Nothing too crazy, but this one is purely because of the hype that the card got from being unbanned over in the OCG. I think overall, it's really unlikely that the card does anything in either the TCG or OCG. Expect this card to be peeled off of the list on the next TCG ban list and for people to get really hyped and try to buy it out, but don't expect the card to do well. Rather, I would definitely recommend just trying to sell the card early and taking advantage of the hype. Alright, so this one is pretty unexpected for us to talk about. It is Starliege Seyfert. So, rather surprisingly, Dragon Link has made its way into the format and has become something of a top-tier strategy. At the Remote Duel YCS this past weekend, Bestial Dragon Link actually took 5 of the top 32 spots, which is the second most representation from any single deck after Kashtira. And to be fair, I think Dragon Link is really scary. They got access to Lubellion and Magnemite within the last year, and those cards are definitely a big boost to the deck. Seyfert is a pretty important 3-of in the strategy. It has an on-field effect that theoretically could allow you to search for a Black Metal Dragon by discarding a dragon from your hand. Nothing too ridiculous, but I guess it's still a good effect to have access to. The other thing it does is that you can banish it from grave to add a level 8 light or dark dragon back to your hand from your graveyard, which is generally going to be a Chaos Dragon Levianeer. Really great follow-up for the following turn, and makes Seyfert not just a solid normal summon, but also pretty solid discard fodder for Dragon Ravine as well. So with Seyfert, it's definitely one of the more important monsters that you want to get into your rotation, and so it makes sense that when people see Dragon Link doing well, Seyfert is one of the cards that gets targeted to be bought out. Now as a card, Seyfert is one that has been trending up over the last month or so. The secrets used to be around $15 each. They're now all the way up to between $25 and $30 per copy. And then aside from that, the ultras are right around $5 each. The card does have a common printing as well, which is probably what prevents the card from becoming too ridiculously expensive or overpriced. But for those of you that are old Dragon Link players that maybe have original Seyferts lying around, these are worth a pretty penny now, and I think you should definitely consider offloading them while Dragon Link is so hyped, if you're planning on not playing the strategy. So this card, yes, we have talked about it before, but it looks like the card went through yet another round of buyouts. It is Beat Bladesman for hire. So one deck that is surprisingly strong in this format is Sprite Runic for hire, a deck that uses the draw power of the for hire engine to cycle through resources really quickly in order to deck out the opponent. I think that of the 4 Sprite decks to make top 32 at the Remote Duel YCS, 3 of them were the for hire variant, which is really cool. Beat is a key card from the archetype searching for a monster for hire. When another monster for hire is special summoned to the field, the idea is that you get several monsters for hire onto the board so that you can make full go and draw cards whenever something is destroyed, which is pretty easy to do thanks to the Runic engine. Anyways, at the time I'm recording this, there are barely any secret rare copies of Beat on the market once again, and the card is currently sitting at $20 per copy. There is also the ultra rare, which is around $3 right now, not too bad. Actually, Beat is only a one of, so it's kind of odd that it is the one being bought out, but the secrets from Dark Saviors were short printed, and they are the card's highest rarity printing. The other card that is worth paying attention to is Rex, which actually came out as a super rare from a following core set. That's the one that's a 3 of for the deck, but it's still only $1 or $2 right now. If you're wanting to jump on the deck now, grab your 1 copy of Beat for yourself to use, but if you do have any extras, you might want to dump the rest, since the deck will probably fall off pretty hard once Sprite or Runic get hit on the next ban list. And finally, the last card we're looking at is Herald of the Arclight. This is actually one of the more long-standing extra deck monsters we've seen in the entire game. Not only is it a walking macrocosmos / negate, but it also searches for a ritual monster or spell when it's sent to the graveyard, so it has seen usage in a ton of different strategies. Well, now we're actually seeing the card potentially used by another deck, and that is Branded Despia. They got access to a new card in the form of Shadow's Light from Battles of Legend Monstrous Revenge, and that allows you to target an Aluber that you control and special summon a Herald of the Arclight from out of the extra deck, which is pretty awesome. I mean, heck, you could even use Shadow's Light's graveyard effect to normal summon an extra Quem or something like that. Definitely looking like a really solid boost to the strategy. Anyways, Herald of the Arclight is a really solid card that has had several different printings, a few supers, an ultra rare, and then a gold rare I think as well. For all of these different versions, the price is anywhere from $3 to $6, with the gold obviously being slightly cheaper and then the originals being a bit more expensive. However, I'd encourage you all to keep an eye on this card because it has a history of getting expensive whenever it starts to see play. To be honest, I have no idea really about how Branded Despia works. Like, I understand what it does, but I don't know about all of the different lines and such, so I don't know how much bringing a Herald of Arclight onto the board helps or hinders the strategy. But I do know, from the perspective of someone who has flipped several copies of Arclight before, this card has gone from being $2 to $10 several times in the past, like, 7 or 8 years since its release. So if you can grab them for a couple of dollars, this is a lot of the time going to be a very solid pickup. Alright guys, that's all we have for today's episode. The Remote Duel YCS was definitely enlightening, and I really love diverse formats, so it was really cool to see so many people trying out different strategies and actually having success with them. It makes the format a lot more open, a lot more fun. I feel like there's more movement with the market, so I think I'm going to try a couple of new decks out at my locals this weekend. Who knows? We're going to have to wait and see. Anyways, guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch, please make sure that you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Also, make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. And if you haven't already, of course, hit that subscribe button. And until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.